Thank you, Professor Sunanda Sen, for joining us today with the Rethinking Economics India Network for this interview. Um, okay, so the first question to your side is this. What made you motivated to pursue a career in economics?
Well, I don't think I regretted it, but I was not very clear in my undergrad before I started my undergraduate days in Presidency College, Calcutta. Well, I didn't know what is economics, but more or less a vague idea, you can say. But as I started doing, I found it increasingly interesting, not only because of the number of teachers who were teaching and who were just wonderful. I can name them, and one of them was my thesis supervisor also later, Bhavatosh Datta. Anyway, so when I started, what did click? What really got my attention and concern is that the poverty and inequality. So long I was homebound, I was in a school which was not far from my home. And, I was meeting people who were not very concerned with the issues, with social issues and so on. So as I move on, as I use public transport, as I look around the world, by my side, I notice poverty, inequality, injustice. And I thought maybe economics is one way to address these things. That's it.
Okay, okay. A follow-up question from that, Professor, that is not on the question list that we sent you. Could you name a few of the professors or people that inspired you, that you looked up at?
Yes. As per the professors, the one whose name comes to my mind immediately is Professor, you will not know the name maybe, but some of your seniors may, Bhavatosh Datta. Bhavatosh Datta, who was teaching in this college, Presidency College, and also Calcutta University over quite some time, and whose students include, well, name them, Sukumar Chakraborty, Amartya Sen, and so on. And my classmates also included some people who later on did brilliant work. One of them, Amya Bakshi, and so on. So you can see and also, the debating club in the Presidency College. I'll hear, the issues, and people will come from outside and just open up our minds. That was the thing. So that's how it started, right?
Yes, yeah. Thank you for that, Professor. The second question that we have for you today is, how has being a female researcher and professor in this field been significant to you?
Yes. Well, one thing I must say, wherever I've worked, wherever, I was a student, I didn't feel very different as a woman, as a girl student. And people around me were very civil in the sense, I didn't find that they're discriminating against me. But at the same time, as a woman, as I look around and as I used to meet more people, I became conscious increasingly of patriarchy within family. Yes, even in my family, it was not very easy to start up and sort of take a job and be a professional and all that. But, nobody stopped me. But, I was the first. Therefore, I had to make my way. But that apart, not family, but around me, I could see the kind of patriarchy which prevails in our society. And as a woman professor, as a woman as such, I did feel. And I did feel that there is something to be done, something needs to be done to help this discrimination against women. Yes, even though I didn't feel it personally, but I did notice, the things around me. Okay.
Yes, thank you for that, Professor. The third question that we have for you is, as a PhD student in the University of Calcutta in the 1960s, do you believe there was discrimination against gender minority PhD students? If yes, could you elaborate?
Uh, no, I don't think so. I don't think I was treated very differently as a
Mm-hmm.
female student. No, neither any special advantage nor any discrimination. But opportunities were few. Opportunities for working further. Working means, both research and where to research, the location, the facilities, and then finally, what kind of a job you can get. Those were very limited those days. Nobody would, people would frown upon you if you say, well, I'll join corporates. No, no, not that I wanted. I didn't want ever. But at the same time, going in a different direction than academics was not thought of, was not very usual. So, I should say that, and also, study somewhere which is convenient, which is in your hometown, that kind of thing. So constraints were there, yeah, but no discrimination because, I was in an elite surrounding, people knew the worth of human beings. And so I don't think they ever had any problem with women or girl students, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor. And as a follow-up question to that, that's not there on the list. You mentioned constraints. Could you elaborate, please, on the kind of constraints that you personally faced, apart from the employment-specific ones?
I grew up in Calcutta,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not, it was natural for me to go to these colleges, Presidency College, Calcutta University, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had in mind a little bit of interest and desire that maybe, why not? I could study in Delhi or abroad and so on. But I don't think my parents were very agreeable to that. They thought, oh, no, let her do as much as possible here, and that kind of thing. And again, in terms of jobs, I started in Calcutta. I haven't mentioned, I think you may not know, but I've spent quite a few years in the university, in the other university in Calcutta, which is Jadavpur University. You know the name, Jadavpur.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was my first job. And that was in the city itself. And then in between, I got I was initiated also by friends who were already abroad, who were in MIT and various places. I thought, okay, let me see, let me try. And I got, I shouldn't just elaborate on this, but I got scholarships, a Campbell scholarship as well as Fulbright scholarship. I went to Yale. But that was the big barrier, big jump rather, for in my career, to leave home, to leave my home city, and to be in a surrounding which is completely different, etc. And so I think, that was a break. Yeah.
Yes. A big one. A really
I don't know
big
whether
one.
I answered you.
Yes,
Yeah.
you did, Professor. You did. Yeah. Okay. For the next question, it's the following. Do you think there is a bias against research done in the global south compared to the north? How does this discrimination play out, and how do we break away from the stranglehold? Specifically, Professor, given your experience abroad.
Right. First of all, I should say that the hurdles, if I talk about my time in the university as a student, yes, certainly. Can you imagine? Nobody was using a computer those days. No. I only when I went to Yale, I was asked by a professor that, I am not so easy with handwriting. Can you type it out? So I bought a typewriter immediately and I got it done. But my whole thesis was typed out by somebody from outside, from ISI, from Indian Statistical Institute, a fellow who very kindly did it, but was a condition that you must do an insurance cover and so on. So on the whole, uh, resources, facilities were far more limited those days. But I must say, for the over quite a number of years now, digitalization, that has removed a large part of these constraints and barriers. Now I can, I'm writing a new book, so I can read whatever I want just, from my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I can ask a colleague, whether here or abroad, what it is.
Yeah.
And you can ask me questions, and we never met. So digitalization has removed the barriers extremely well, So I think this is the difference from my time as a student and my time as a researcher or as a faculty professor and that kind.
Okay.
Communication, yes,
Yeah.
that has really helped.
And Professor, what about the research that's done in India, for example, and the research that's, say, done in a university like Yale? Do you think there is any greater importance attached to the research that's done at Yale compared to in India right now? Do you see any discrimination in the research that's sort of done in between these countries, or generally more broadly than that?
Well, Yale was the very early stage of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 2 years there as a postdoctoral fellow, and I did a paper which was published and so on. But my links with the West and the colleagues in the West and universities in the West, it came up much later. It's not just Yale. I have visited Cambridge many times, and I'm a fellow of different colleges. So my stay in Cambridge, first time, I think it was long back, 1979, the whole year I was there in Clare Hall as a visiting fellow. And that kind, and on and off I have visited. And through that, and through other, naturally, these all of us, get these things, we get invitations and so on. So we meet people, and I have got very good colleagues as well as friends all over the world now. So these things do matter. And if you are talking about the interest in India, certainly there is a lot of interest on development, and in that context on India as well.
Mm-hmm.
And often, I'm also asked, what is happening in the country, which is not very great. So, these are the things which has been happening. And in my time in Yale in late 60s, I don't think, there was so much of awareness. No. India came up as an emerging economy much later. And also with the prospects and problems, both. India has acquired its own place now. India, people know India more or less, and many people work on India as well,
Mm-hmm.
and on development. Nobody can work on development short of India. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Professor, thank you. For the next question, we have, what is your opinion on the prevalent mainstream in economics? What impact do you think this approach has on economics as a discipline? So we're talking about the main thought that gets generated in economics as a discipline in these days, and as well as the methodology that's used for the same. What is your opinion on both of them, and what impact do you think these approaches has on the discipline of economics as a whole?
Right. Since you are rethinking economics, I'm sure you are aware of the fact that there is a big, gulf of difference between mainstream economics and heterodox economics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And heterodox economics seeks to challenge mainstream economics, but not very effectively in terms of policy. Mainstream economics is the one which will, it has a very pernicious effect for two reasons. One is that this kind of economics is taught especially in North America, in USA, and not so much in England. It's taught. There is a whole school which we can describe as you are saying, mainstream economics. Now, what do they do? Well, their main principle is that, after all, unless you make the markets free, there cannot be any efficiency. And how do they arrive on that? You see, they believe in this process because they think that human beings, they are rational beings. And so this is the rational choice. If I am doing, I am speaking with you, I'm talking over this laptop, and this is my choice, which is also as a sensible person, it is a rational choice. Now, with this rational choice, if you add on myself, yourself, and the third person who was recording, well, group them together, group the whole community together, group the whole, all the people in the country or in the world together. Whatever they're doing, collectively, they are doing something very rationally. And in this rational process of acting, if they find that they can move easily in a free market and they operate freely in the market, well, that will be the most desirable, most efficient path of any kind of movement. Now, in this, if they, I mean, they believe in it very wrongly. I mean, many of us are writing on this. This is not the place to elaborate on that. But on a whole, this rational choice principle has taken them aback. Like, they move forward and then they preach. They are like the missionaries who preach, who come to any forum and they say, well, this is how we will progress. And in this, you can think of the Washington Consensus. You must have heard of Washington Consensus. The IMF, World Bank, etc. These bodies, which are run mostly by North Americans and those in Europe who believe in this rational choice, they all believe in the principle of free market. Now, if there is principle of free market, then what happens? That, you and me, we may be very, or a third person, we may be very differently placed. They don't have history. They don't want to know our background. Maybe, I'm talking about a third person who lives in a slum nearby. How can the person operate as freely as myself in a free market? Impossible. But they won't believe it. They won't trust. They won't be going along that path of argument, and they will say, "Okay, open the market, everything will be fine." Sorry, just a minute.
No issues. Please take your time.
No, it's fine. So I get so angry with these things that I can't control myself. So then, so in this rational choice principle, therefore, the mainstream economics has spread its wing all over. And in most countries, I said this is the first reason, the theory behind. And the second reason is that, they pervade countries in terms of official policy. I'll give you an example. Most of the people in our Ministry of Finance, they have come with a training which is from North America. And some of them have also worked in the International Monetary Fund, etc. So you can imagine what kind of policy they will be advocating and preaching, and what kind of policies will be implemented in the country. So this is how mainstream economics had a very pernicious effect in the country, and it is also both political as well as economic. Economic, they believe in all these things, and political, big people, big capital, they are connected with this free market because it helps them. So then, between these two, things go on, things move on, and then policies follow. And one of the two consequences, one of them is that you find extreme inequality in the country. I'll talk about it later if there is time. There is extreme inequality, people who are collecting money, people who are building up their wealth. Well, they keep on. And it's one track system. They are just having more and more and more. You
Yeah.
find the Nirav Mehtas and so on and so forth. And the other thing is that they create a divide. This thing, not they personally, but this mainstream economics and free market, it has created a divide between what? Between the real economy. By real economy, I mean output, employment, people's jobs, people's livelihood. This is the real economy, and the financial economy. What is financial economy? Financial economy include the stock market,
Mm-hmm.
the speculation, and various other things which is quick money, which is short-term kind of investment. So they create a divide so that you read the newspaper, the business page, and whatever. You find that, on the one hand, the stock market booms and the capitalization of the stock market, which means how much capital is circulating in the stock market, is also going up. At the same time, you find real economy has nothing much. Real economy is moving at a very slow pace, and given now this COVID and all that, so many people are in a distress. So you can see, this divide which has been created and which is expanding. The divide is expanding.
Mm-hmm.
And here is the real economy which is stagnating. And here is the financial economy which is just booming for selected people. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. That was very descriptive. That was very elucidative in in nature. Yes. Thank you. And from your description right now, I do have one follow-up, and you already alluded to that a bit. You mentioned the different types of inequality. So could you elaborate and describe a bit on the different types of inequality then?
The inequality, one should be between the rich and poor.
Mm-hmm.
Those who have accumulated wealth, and those who can do anything in the free market, and those who don't even have the means of livelihood, or even in the middle class. So, there's a structure. And as you go down, you find it matters in terms of starvation, in terms of livelihood. As you move up, you find they have a lot of money, but they don't have any, what shall I say? There is no purpose of that money other than to make more money. So money gets more money by being invested in speculation and then again circulating within the same circuit, right?
Yeah.
So this is a concentric cycle which is going on, and that money is not coming out to help out the real sector.
Okay. For the next question, we have this. What is your opinion on the undergraduate economics courses in India thus far? And do you think the curriculum needs to change? And if so, how so?
Yes, Yash. I think, those of you young people who are now taking a lot of interest very rightly. Unfortunately, textbooks are rather, they don't have much on heterodox economy. Undergraduate textbooks, none of us have written a good textbook, which, we have written on development, we have written on various things, we are writing articles in various places, but no, and there's something which has to be taught in undergraduate. So as in default, what happens that, the economics which is lectured upon and taught in the undergraduate classes, they are primarily mainstream economics. They are mainstream economics and slight kind of critiques. If people who are teaching, they don't believe in it, they will say, oh, look, this doesn't prevail. But, you have to learn this first. This is the thing. And I remember my early days in JNU back in 70s, I think 74, 5. Joan Robinson, you must have heard of Joan Robinson. Joan Robinson and John Eatwell, another Cambridge professor, they published a book, The Principles or some such thing of economics. And that was one of the first attempts to write a textbook for the undergraduates. But and they came to JNU. They called many. Joan called many college teachers and distributed copies of the book. But very sad, neither in Asia, in India, nor Latin America, I don't see any good textbook which can be recommended for undergraduates, which is heterodox economics. Very unfortunate, very irresponsible on our part. Yes.
Yes, and my personal undergraduate education in economics is also a testament to that. I did not study anything heterodox here.
Yeah, because there is no alternative, not that your teachers used to believe in it, but they thought, let me do this. In other words, they will not get a job, otherwise, etc., etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next question is, your research works cover a wide range of topics from trade and international finance to labor and globalization. What do you feel has been your most significant scholarly contribution and why?
Right. Yes, it's a long period, and I'm quite old. And so in this, I have traveled a long way. So then, yes, I used to teach international trade in JNU initially and other things. So gradually I moved on, and globalization and development, that's slim book. It is very dated today. I'll not ask you to read it. But National Book Trust and its chairman, Bipan Chandra, who is a good friend also, lives in the neighborhood. So he persuaded me to write a book. Also, another very good book came out from Amit Bhaduri, Development with Dignity. These were the books in that period were very relevant in the context of the globalization, in the context of, the very sad state of the real economy, despite trade and globalization going up. But, I moved on from globalization. I think then I moved on to labor. And I must say I learned a lot while studying empirically also, along with a former student of mine, Vyasdev Dasgupta, this book, something, anyway, it came out from Sage. So, in that we could see how even in the organized sector, casualization is the norm. People are made to work without any contract, nothing, and their livelihood is very poor. They can't get enough for subsistence, and the legal system is against them. And of late, the legal system in India, if we talk about India, yes, the legal system, the labor laws have been tightened further. I think I have written a small piece in where or somewhere, and many other people other than me also, they are writing on labor laws. So, it did concern me and many other people. And so from labor, I found, how is it happening? There again comes that divide between the real economy and the other economy, the rich economy and the poor economy within the same country, right? Yeah. So in that context, then what is happening? I became more interested in finance, and that is my mainstay now. I write mostly, I try to write on contemporary issues, etc. now and then, but I'm trying to write a new book. Now, what does it do? What is finance? You see, if I now go back to the story that free market is the best for efficiency, then on that plea, financial markets will be made free also. You see, from late 90s, mid 90s, in most countries, especially the advanced countries and gradually the developing countries like India, financial markets were left open. As you keep it open, all kinds of capital will come and all kinds of activities will happen. But more important than that, as you keep it open, there is no certainty. Now, uncertainty enters in. You know, you don't know what the price will be tomorrow. You don't know what the interest rate will be tomorrow. You don't know what the how this share will fare in the market. How whether there will be collapse in the share market. Everything, all these things are very uncertain.
Yeah.
Now, if this is uncertain, then there comes up another round, another layer of activities, which is protecting the risk. And those are the instruments by which you protect the risk is some kind of a contract. And these are known as future contract, a forward contract, future contract, and swings and so on. All these things. These are called derivatives. So why am I talking about all this? I'm talking about all this because I want to tell you that when the financial markets are left open, it creates a peculiar layer of profitable business. And this creating this profitable layer of activities in the financial regime means activities which are in the stock market are far more lucrative, far more profitable than if you invest it in a factory. And so why should I invest? I go to stock market, I take my money, I invest it for a very short period and get my return, both as dividends and also as capital gain, which is my profit, and so on and so forth. So between these things, what is happening, lot of money, streams of money are moving in the direction of finance, and very small amounts are left behind to cater for the activities which create output and jobs and livelihood, right? So this is what has happened. And so I'm very interested in exploring further how this is happening not only all over the world, but also in countries like India, in countries like other countries in Latin America, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, etc. And I call this whole process is known as financialization. You simply change the system and make it financialized, because financialization means, profitability is more in finance and less in real. And I finally, on this matter, I would like to, also harp upon, also deal with, the difference between advanced countries and developing countries. Till today, I haven't talked about another interest of mine, which is economic history. Yes, when I was long back, one whole year I spent working in the archives, India office and so on in London. And I came up with a book which is known as Colonies and the Empire. It came out long back, and historians are quite, it helps them. So anyway, in this, what did I observe? I found that the same process of hierarchy which prevailed in the colonial period, which still prevails. Look at the Black Lives Matter and so on. It hasn't gone. But on the whole, that kind of a hierarchy which you have observed in the formal colonial period, also prevail in neo-colonies. And now, between the advanced countries and the developing countries, we can't fix our exchange rate. We can't fix our interest rate. We can't do so many other things. And we can't control our capital flows, even though they are of a speculatory nature. So why is it? Because we have been told that, look, keep your markets free, keep your markets open. That will help you in terms of efficiency.
Thank you, Professor. And thank you for that sneak peek of your book as well. And one follow-up question. You mentioned empirical work on labor. Could you elaborate on that too as well? And your takeaways from the same?
Yeah, in the empirical part of this book, we did some surveys, which was very useful. Most of it, Vyasdev and a few other friends, young people, they did, some students, etc. So the surveys, one kind of survey was talking to people who work in the export processing zones. Okay, and it was quite quite something. You know, these surveyors, these students of mine, they went and they could not meet them publicly. In the sense, you know, they are like captive prisoners. They are kept within the buildings of these export processing zones. Export processing zone is a big area, but the factories are there, and the people who are working there, they are mostly casual workers. They have come from villages, and they have been contracted by the contractors, and the contractors have brought them there on the understanding that the contractor will pay them the money. Of course, the contractors will get a margin, which is you know, between the actual wages and what the company is paying. Anyway, but the workers, when they are inside the factory, they are not supposed to meet anybody. So what would my students do? They will go and they will meet them in their dwellings, in their huts, even in the evening, you know, over a cup of tea, under a tree maybe. It was quite something. And they will meet them there and then talk about their work, their life, and so on. So this kind of thing. And the other part of this empirical study, I must say, if you read this book, you will find that one of us, Vyasdev Dasgupta, who is the co-author, who was my student also, he calculated an index of security, labor security, depending with, you know, the components were, you know, what is your education, what is your expectation of life, and so on. You can imagine, you know, what kind of things will be there in the security, in the as components of the security index. So that I found was very useful. And we followed, you know, somebody who has done it in abroad, Guy Standing. He did a similar index for other people. So we did these two. And then, of course, casualization and the kind of, and those days, at least when the book came out, it was so much better than what it is today in India. So you can see, you know, the differences, and it has worsened. Condition of labor has not improved with progress of humanity, whatever it is. Right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Professor, for that. The next question, what are the different ways researchers can contribute to society apart from through scholarly work across time?
Oh, yes. What I could not do, which is grassroots level work. You know, I haven't been able. I was confined to JNU most of my life. And now, you know, I have retired, I'm here. Of course, I keep track of people. I keep track of the problems of people. I talk to them. But it is not the same as doing it in a far more organized way at the grassroots level. So, you know, that is the way out, you know, people, and a lot of people are doing it, you know, I admire them. And you see, that is the way to know the problems of those who don't, of the deprived people. Yeah.
But do you think researchers specifically can contribute to the cause of grassroots as well? Do they provide something unique?
I couldn't get it. Sorry?
Professor, do you think that researchers such as yourself, do they and can they provide something unique to the grassroots work that is already ongoing as we speak?
Well, even if I'm not present there physically, certainly I keep writing. I keep writing mostly in the where, and other, I mean, those don't mean much, you know, don't let me say that, you know, those are so powerful that it will change the society and so on. That's not the case. But what I feel like, you know, I do write. And even though, you know, again, you know, there is this big divide within the real economy. How many people read? You know, today, for example, here, there was a camp where they were giving vaccine injections. And I have already taken one shot. And I asked the people who work at home, that why don't you go and get it and get your Aadhaar card, what is your age? Most of them don't read, you know. So on the whole, if we write in English in elite websites and journals, that will not reach them. But I know people, I know from friends, even, you know, my generation, you know, that kind of friend who write, not only just write, but who translate it, circulate it. But, you know, that kind of an atmosphere, unfortunately, is right now not very much there. So
Yeah.
anyway, if I have to say how to make it effective, two things. One is grassroots level work to know things better, and the second one is language, and to make people literate so that they can read at least in their own language, in their mother tongue.
Yes. Two very important points, Professor. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, the second last question for now. What have been some of the most memorable instances in your career as a teacher at JNU?
Well, my memorable moments were with my students. Yes, you know, I still remember, you know, the lovely time I had. Not just the PhD students who became part of family, but that apart, you know, the graduate students, etc., and the wonderful colleagues. You know, we were a team. The Center for Economic Studies and Planning. When we started, there was no economics department in the university. And then we drafted our courses, which was taken by many other universities, many other departments like Hyderabad and so on. So anyway, and a few of us, just 6 of us, imagine, we started the department for and continued for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it was extremely, you know, satisfying. And the friendship which developed, the kind of camaraderie, in the sense, you know, the support for each other's work, it was just something.
Professor, do you mind sharing a bit more anecdotes about the conception of the Center for Economic Studies and Planning? Since you were part of the founding team, do you mind sharing a bit more, a few more stories from your time over there?
I'm not a good storyteller, but yes, I remember, you know, we collected, some of us, I think Prabhat, myself, and so on, we went and collected some old manuscripts. You know, that time I had some interest, others also had, very old. You see, Ministry of Finance was throwing away those documents. They said, we don't have space. And somebody informed us, and we said, we want it, we have space. So we went, we collected them, and then we formed a little library. And you know, that was the beginning of the CSP library. And now it is a building. Then, well, in that library, the opening I remember. I still remember Jayati Ghosh. She was a student at that time. She brought a coconut from somewhere, and she just hit it, and we we celebrated. You know? So things are a lot of fun, and more or less one thing I must say. You see, out of these 6 people, 4 were one was from a, I shouldn't say heterodox, but he used to teach general equilibrium. He used to teach mathematical economics. And others also, time to time, yes, of course, growth theory and so on. But there was no contest, there was no confrontation, you know, between the different groups. There was a complete sort of fraternity, more or less, which was very, very useful, very conducive, you know. That's how we progressed, I think.
And
That's how, you know, you students from all over and so on.
And a good example of plurality in fruition, Professor, yeah, in action, yes. And also, this reminds me of another thing that I read very recently, that all good things do begin with a library. But thank you for that. Okay, the final question that we have. What would your advice be to students pursuing or willing to pursue a PhD in economics in terms of heterodox universities and curriculum, as well as what possible career options there are post a PhD, apart from just academia?
Well, I think you have two questions. One is what kind of economics should they do? Can they do? I think they should do something which relates to the reality and not just equilibrium economics. No, they should do something which reflects upon the reality, which has some policy implications, policy prescriptions, and which will be useful for society. And the second part, after their PhD, etc., maybe they will be teachers like many of us, or they can be in any sphere of life. Yes, but the most important thing, they have to be a good human being. That they have to value humanity, and they have to. It's a very difficult world today, which they will be facing, not just India, but all over the world. And they should stand up against oppression, and they should know how to protest, even though it is difficult. It is a very difficult world. So I think, and also injustice, they should notice, and they should try to do something, even at a small micro level. Yes, and I expect that they will bring in a better world than what is prevailing right now.
Okay, Professor. And just a slight sort of like strand from this particular question, from what you just discussed and told me. Any advice to people who are pursuing a PhD, or are in their application phase, or are sort of searching out for a career after completing their PhD? What would you tell them? What would you like to tell them?
No, I didn't understand. Are you asking me, those who are in their at a certain stage of their PhD, what kind of
advice you would like to give them? Yes, having completed yours, yeah.
I know. Those who are in the middle of a PhD, let them finish their PhD. Of course, they will. I'm sure, and I'm sure they will do it in an area which is meaningful, etc. And after that, I don't think it is necessarily they can be anywhere. PhD is what? PhD is an opening up your mind to critical analysis, and that that kind of an ability, that kind of a skill which you acquire, it stays in your lifetime, through your lifetime. So make use of that wherever you are, in industry, in business, in academics. You try to use that in judging situations, and to help to change the world to a better world. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Professor. Okay, I think that was a very wonderful way of ending it. Do you have any questions that you would like to answer or ask of me or Muskan over here? And any feedback or any final thoughts?
Yes, and I don't know your group, and I was pleasantly surprised that look at these young people, what they're doing. But what is your, what is your view, or what is your goal in running this program? Running this, I don't know whether it is a program. All of you are working somewhere, I know that. I can guess it. But on the whole, what do you visualize through this? What do you want to achieve?
Okay.
Not personally, but as a group, why are you doing it? If I ask you. Yeah.
Okay. So, Professor, the Rethinking Economics movement, it is a global movement, and it started. It was conceptualized post the 2008 global financial crisis in the UK, in I think 2012 or 2013, one of those 2 years. And since then, it has expanded across to different countries. And last year, a group of 4 people. I was not part of the original 4, but a group of 4 students. Started the Indian network of the Rethinking Economics movement. So we are still affiliated with the global movement, but we are the India-specific chapter of the global movement. And what we together, the Indian movement and the collective as a whole, seek to do is we try to advocate for a different economics along the lines of what you were describing in the interview. One that represents reality, especially social reality, and one that gets taught and gets utilized not only by professionals but also within classrooms and by students, and that gets represented by academicians, industry professionals, and various people across different sectors. So that is our main goal. And right now, the India network, the India specific network, how we do that is through a variety of channels, but we host events, we host webinars, um, we maintain a blog, we have a newsletter, we host interviews and fireside chats like the one you and I are having right now. And we also have a few projects in the works. We have released a report as well. And yeah, those are our main pathways to change. And Muskan, you're free to speak up as well right now. But yeah, that's what we aim to do, and that is how we are going about doing it right now.
Wonderful. Yeah. It shows a different kind of an avenue for young people like you, and the more it draws, the current students and other young people, it will be quite useful. I think
Yes,
it will be,
yeah.
it will tell them, what is wrong with that kind of economics, what they can do, and issues. I think you can bring in people to raise. I'm sure you do. The I don't know. I'm not very clear. But what kind of issues are important today in the country? Not just economics, but overall political, economic kind.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be doing that.
So in the past, we have held events around climate change, for example, a better economics for climate change. One of our recent events was also on diversity in economics academia around the country and the top institutions. Diversity in terms of both gender and caste. And our last event was also on decolonizing economics. And we had a wonderful panel for that as well. In terms of representation across the country, geographical representation, we're all volunteers. And as you correctly mentioned, we're all working somewhere else. We all have full-time jobs. But we have sort of student volunteers from the east of the country, down south as well, central parts. We have representatives from Calcutta, and as well as the north and the northwest. So yeah, we are fairly diverse in our volunteer composition, and yeah, we hope to remain that way in the future. Yeah, we will certainly strive for it.
Yeah, it will be useful to, have more volunteers from the colleges and universities, right?
All of
I
our
mean, to
volunteers are
make it,
students.
whether they volunteer or not, at least make it known in those venues, right?
Yeah, yeah. And all of our volunteers are students, and we're also in the works of establishing local rethinking economics chapters across the country in different institutions, academic institutions. I mean, yes.
Right, right. I wish, this can spread much more than what it is today. I'm sure it will. Also, I wish, there will be some effort to use the local languages at some stage, not today, it's very difficult, but at some stage, if, for example, in South, you can use one or two of these languages, or Bengali or Hindi particularly,
Yes.
it will be
Yes,
useful.
Professor.
But that's a long way. That's a long way off, and you people may not have that kind of time. But it's a wonderful. I really admire you people. Excellent. Very good.
Thank
I'm
you,
very
Professor.
happy to talk with you. We are very happy with this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.